from Manila by political analyst Richard Heydarian. He is the author of the book, The Rise of Duterte. And we say 2 mayors, that's in 24 hours. There have been 10 mayors and 4 deputy mayors who have been killed since Duterte took office. What is going on?
Well, according to the Philippine National Police, there are up to 23,000 deaths that are currently under investigation. But they're arguing that only 2,000 of those are related to the drug war, or in one way or another were part of potential extrajudicial killings. Now, it's very hard to connect whether these 2 mayors' death was in one way or another related. With the Mayor Halili, President Duterte has accused him, or at least implied that perhaps it has to do with the drug. He's involved in a drug campaign, something that his family of the mayor actually categorically denied. In the case of the second mayor in Nueva Ecija, the police right now has also formed a special investigation team, and what they're looking at is the possibility. There are at least 3 angles there. It could be about business competition, it could be about politics, or something more personal. But it seems in the second case, at least, the police are not looking at any drug angle at all. And as far as I know, President Duterte has not made that kind of accusation. But these are 2 mayors in Balanced Luzon, closer to the industrial region and seat of power in the Philippines. A lot of the previous mayors who were killed, or vice mayors who were killed, were from Mindanao and Visayas regions, more peripheral regions. So the fact that perhaps they're closer to the seat of power, some people would try to make something out of it. But as far as I know, they're not related based on the evidence.
Some of them, I think, not all were linked to the drug trade. Some were, though. A few were on Duterte's infamous narco list, were they not? Has the president made any comment on this?
Well, on the second death so far, we don't see any kind of comment coming out from the president, but the presidential palace and the spokesman of the president, Attorney Heydarian, have made a very strong statement that they can condemn this with the strongest language. It's just that it's quite ironic that as Duterte enters his 3rd year in office, he promised order. That was precisely what brought him to power. And yet what we see on the ground for many people is actually just the opposite of that. Of course, the president and his allies are arguing that you have to go through a valley of blood and tears in order to cleanse and purge the country from the menace of drugs. But for a lot of human rights groups, for a lot of ordinary citizens, actually what they feel is we have actually a climate of impunity that has worsened in the past few years.
Yeah, it's ironic that a president who promised law and order, and you've got 23,000 dead people. I mean, it's an odd way to get there, isn't it? I mean, what about the public support for Duterte and how he's governing?
This is where things get a little bit tricky. So when people were asked, do you support the war on drugs, 70–80% of Filipinos say yes, because there's a recognition that drug is a problem. Perhaps not as bad as narco states like Mexico or some Latin American countries, but they feel that something decisive has to be done. So President Duterte did not manufacture this crisis. He tapped into an existing perception of lack of order in the country. But when people were asked, do you want the suspects, drug suspects, to be killed, 90% said no. When people were asked, do you feel safe, 80% or more actually said that they're concerned about they themselves being victims of extrajudicial killings. So my way of interpreting this kind of a split personality, kind of a contradiction, is that people agree in principle with President Duterte that something decisive has to be done, but they do not necessarily agree with his methodology. So this is where we have a problem. How do you interpret the data? How do you interpret people's sentiment? It seems the president interprets it as if he has a carte blanche because his approval ratings are still through the roof as he enters his 3rd year in office.
Yeah, I mean, you make a very good point, the distinction between, I mean, do you oppose drugs? Of course, everyone's going to say, yes, of course I oppose drugs. Do you want everyone who's arrested for drugs being killed? The answer is probably no. It's a good distinction to make. Richard Heydarian, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure, as always.